with since Classic Vanilla. It's called Who Pulled That. We used to speedrun back in Vanilla. We got first everything except Molten Core, I believe, and server fastest as well. I think in every tier, I believe. We peaked at like around 250, I think, world. Maybe in AQ we got into the top 100 for a few weeks. But now we just consider ourselves a casual guild.
Yeah, I speedran a little bit in security and BT in early Sunwell, but it just wasn't for me. Deep is very much like on the casual end now. Not in PvP, but in PvE.
Yeah. Yep. I logged my alt like, I don't know, a month ago. My alt that was in what? They were rating should be like full caps in guild chat. Like, who the fuck is that warlock? Like, why the fuck is he doing like so and so? And someone like answered like, he's in the guild.
That classic cold staff rage.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's fucking funny.
Almost.
Yeah. I mean, they're good guys, but some of them are a bit rough around the edges, I guess.
Yeah, the private server sort of edginess kind of lives on, I feel like, in those guilds.
Yeah, definitely. I think like there are so many guilds, I think, that have like such different cultures, such different like ways of speaking to each other, playing expectations and stuff. And I think the kind of authentic feel that I was looking for, you find it with the private server players who, I wouldn't say necessarily like take it super serious, but like they just have knowledge because they've played it for so long. And I feel like my remembrances back in the day was that like every guild had that one guy or like those two guys who just lived and breathed the game. And I think like if you're in a guild where like everyone is just super, like, doesn't necessarily need to be super casual or anything, but like they log in once a week and they raid and they're kind of just done with it, I think it takes so much away from the game.
All right, boys. I am ready when you are. Sorry about that. Sorry to butt in.
Oh no, we were just realizing we run in kind of similar circles.
Oh, very good. Very good. Arcos is a man of our town. He's fucking everywhere.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yep.
All right, are you guys ready to go?
Yep.
Yep.
Sure.
Let's fucking do it. So I've been threatening to do this for a very long time. This is an idea I wanted to hit up back in sort of December and January, but just due to a multitude of reasons, and mostly being, again, my IRL reasons sort of kicking my ass, this was put on the back burner. But now is the time finally to get a few callers together, and I wanted to really sort of, not so much, this is not meant to be a bitching and whinging session, but I really wanted to dive in on how people felt about the customer service experience that WoW Classic has been on the whole. Obviously, we've been talking about this for many years now. The game is 3.5 years old. We all know the stories. It's been covered on the show here and there over time. But I wanted to get guys together and really sort of put the spotlight on, things like ticket times, things like bots and ban waves, things like gold selling, and just sort of talk to the guys about how they feel as paying customers for this product over time and how they would describe Blizzard's efforts in delivering the highest quality products that they could to them. So we're not, sitting here trying to just go, all right, here's our fucking excuse to call them all a pack of cunts and blah, blah, blah. Although that may well, happen. But that's not the purpose of this call. We're trying to do this sort of, as reasonably as we can, and provide the feedback that we feel we can deliver given our time and experiences with the game. But let me introduce our guests. And another, two return guests that have been on the show many, many times, and lots of times recently. And I can't thank the guys enough. We are in one of those what you would call a drier spells with the game. I'm very well versed with the life cycle of Classic and its expansions by this point. I know when the highs come, I know when the lows come, and the content lulls. We're definitely in one now, but I've got callers like these who are so passionate about the game. Content lull or not, they want to be here and they're raring to go to talk about it, and I'm so happy to have them. Let's start with Arcos, mate, you legend. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me on for the millionth time, it feels.
Mate, it's never enough. I can't get enough of you. I love
Never
having
enough.
you. My friend from Iceland. It's fantastic. And we were just talking with our other guest about, I'm so stupid. I'm sure he said this on the show many times, but I had, you hear the accent and you make presumptions, which is never a good thing to do. Someone who also joins you on the European servers and swims in the same WoW circles as you, Waklo, mate. How are you?
Great. Always good to be back.
Mate, I felt like such a dickhead just being like, oh, here we go. Obviously, American server, or Canadian. I'm not sure. Sorry, are you American, mate?
Yeah. I'm from
Okay.
upstate New York.
Oh, good man. There you go. Excellent. So I just presumed, NA servers, blah, blah, blah. But no, you're an EU man.
Yeah. As I was telling you guys before you started the call, I was in grad school when Classic originally launched, so I just sort of rolled in the time zone I was in, and now I'm back in the States, but I never really made the switch, or became a hybrid player. Now I play on both.
Fair enough. All right. Guys, let's get stuck into it. Apologies for the vacuuming in the background. That's all right. Let's talk about maybe just generically before I dive into all the topics. What something like this sort of set off in your mind when I approached you about, hey guys, do you want to be a part of a call about, talking about your experience as a customer with this product? Arcos, I'll start with you. If I just get you very generally speaking about the last 3.5 years, how have you felt about being a paying customer for WoW Classic this whole time? And how would you describe sort of Blizzard's attentiveness to the product and to your needs as an ongoing sort of subscriber?
I mean, that's a kind of a big question, and it spans, quite a long time. I feel like I don't really play many other games, so I'm not sure like what the lifetime of a brand new, AAA game is. I know that the most recent MMOs that have been hyped up about, I've stopped hearing about them, a month or 2 months after they were released. So perhaps 3 years is a long time frame. I would kind of probably just say that as a customer, I feel kind of disenfranchised. I think perhaps that's a correct word to say. It has never really felt like the company cares a lot about the customer or their experiences. There are so many things that have gone wrong, so many decisions that you feel were made where they didn't really think about the customer experience, where they didn't think of the impact it would make on their customers. Especially during Classic, they were very hands off during Classic Vanilla. Not really until the last patch where they kind of stepped in with the chrono boon. Before that, I don't really feel like they did anything. They didn't really try to stop boosting or gold services or bugs or anything. I feel like, but of course, thinking back 3 years, there's definitely something that might have slipped by me. It felt like they were going to take a more hands-on approach for TBC. They made some changes, most notably probably to paladins to make them viable for both factions, which I think the community liked. I don't think there were many people who disliked that change. then it was again kind of hands off. Phase 1 TBC was way too long. I think they probably lost a lot of customers during that time, and I'm just kind of struggling for words how to explain the kind of
that's
lack
okay.
of interaction with the community, and I think that's been an overarching theme that they don't reply to tickets because it's just automated bots. If you report bugs, if you report bots, you might get a mail in game. Thank you for reporting this bot. We've banned him, and then the day after you see the bot still running around. I've seen people typing, in game, be right back, gonna buy some gold. They show up with, 5K, 10K, 30K, whatever. And it kind of just eludes you, like, how can someone type in game that they're going to break the terms of service like this, and there's not a flag system, scrolling through the chat boxes, flagging it, and then someone checks it out. Yeah, okay, this guy received, 30K in his mailbox from a level 1 character somewhere, so he's buying gold, let's ban him. Why isn't that happening? I've not at least heard of it. Then with Wrath, I feel like most of these problems just increased in size and scope, especially with botting and gold buying. On Firemo, where I play, when Sunwell Plateau launched, the server was pretty much unplayable. There were 3, 4, 5, 6 hour queues. If you entered Sunwell, you couldn't loot bosses. You just got disconnected. So they went ahead like, hey, we're going to close the server off. It was the only server in the world at that time where you could not transfer to the server. You could not create level 1 characters on the server unless you already had a character there. And they said they banned the bots. We felt it pretty soon. The playing experience became better. You didn't have as much lag. You could actually go into the raids and loot bosses and see the loot go into your bags. But then they kept the server locked for, I think, 6 or 7 months, and the problem that caused the server being locked was like far and away gone. Like, it was gone within the first 4 weeks, but they still just kept the server locked, and then they locked more servers. Notably on EU, Gehenna's got locked, and on NA, Farlina and Benediction, I believe. I don't know if there was a third one.
Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, like, they didn't explain anything more. I feel like they just said, like, we have this data, it tells us this, but the players are saying different thing. Don't really care. We made this call. We're going to stick to it. And then months pass, and you're like, okay. People start asking, okay, I have an alt on a different server, a max level alt that I want to play, but I transferred all of my other characters from there before my destination server, whichever one it is, got locked. How is it that I can't transfer this other character here when it wouldn't increase the total number of players online? Why is that? No one could answer that question, and they never, touched on it either. It kind of makes no sense, especially when you think it's free money in their pocket for people to do that when a server is locked and no one else is transferring to it. Why didn't they, take that money? Just silly things like that have gone on by with the end of TPC and into Wrath of the Lich King. And to answer, the original question to this is the overarching theme of Blizzard during the lifetime of Classic is that they don't really care about the customer. They don't really care about the customer experience, even though they say, we want you to play with your friends, even though they say, we've published here a mission statement, which they did. And in that statement, they said they would be more vocal, they would talk to the community, they would, be more involved. But then, after that mission statement, we didn't hear anything more about it. So, it just kind of feels like the company is gaslighting to to keep a certain amount of people subscribed to finish at least off Wrath of Lich King. I don't know if they'll go further, you know.
Amazing opening stanza there. Thank you so much for that. That was brilliant. I want to come back to your point about Blizzard not caring about the customer experience in a second. But before we get there, because I've got my opening thing, we'll touch on that as well. Please remind me if I don't go there. But Waklo, I'll turn to you now, mate. And I just want to chase a rabbit that Arcos brought up at the very beginning of his statement there, because I think it's worthwhile contrasting the WoW Classic experience against others if we're able to. Now, in a perfect environment, we'd all be these, incredibly seasoned gamers who do nothing but play all the games in the world in our free time, and we can draw from all the experiences to be able to give XYZ examples of strong, medium, and weak customer service experiences with other live service games. Unfortunately, I'm like Arcos. WoW is kind of not the only game I play, but it, eats up a large portion of my gaming time these days. Sure, I've got my little, single player JRPG that I play on my Switch. Shout out to Chained Echoes. I've got my, my Call of Duty that is my other main game, quote unquote, that I spend a fuckload of time on that I really thoroughly enjoy. But outside of that, as much as I am abreast of gaming news and what's coming and all of this shit, I just don't play as many games as I fucking used to. And WoW really, given that I have the show and everything, is, a titan in terms of my free time. Waklo, I mean, not to put you on the spot, it's okay if your answer is, Josh, I'm like you and Arcos, but do you have any experience at the moment ongoing or in the past with other live service games that we can compare what's been going on with WoW Classic against and say like, yeah, look, I've had this positive or this negative experience in the past and this is how customer service has generally worked for me in the past?
Yeah, I have I do have a sort of low, medium, and high in terms of competence in customer service or just like relationship with the community. My medium would actually be Classic WoW. The 3 games I've probably put, thousands of hours or more into over the course of my life are this game, League of Legends, and Melee, which is the Super Smash Brothers title for the GameCube. Mm-hmm. And for those who just, I guess, aren't aware of it, Melee has a community about as large as the current title out for the Switch. Really deep competitive game, sort of similar to Brood War in it, that it's a game that has all this cool emergent gameplay within it. It's really stood the test of time. But the relationship between Nintendo and the community is extremely negative. Mm-hmm. Nintendo is pretty actively hostile toward the competitive community in Melee, and even to some degree in Ultimate, the current title. And so the Melee community's relationship with Nintendo is just essentially trying to fly below the radar as much as possible, at least in the last year or so. There have been a few like Nintendo partnerships that have blown up in horrible ways.
It's like the kids trying to sneak out the window past curfew all the time.
Yeah, not to get too into it, but Nintendo's really, really horrible to the Melee community. And from that side, I kind of appreciate the ambivalence that Blizzard pays to Classic, that they don't meddle too much in the day-to-day. On the other side of the spectrum, with League, they just have pretty good customer service. If there are notable bugs that get posted to the subreddit and upvoted, usually pretty quickly they'll get fixed, or there'll be like a real effort to get fixed. There was a meme for a long time about a champion named Nidalee whose spear was invisible in certain circumstances, and they thought they'd fixed it about 6 times, but they tried over and over, and that's not something you get in Classic WoW. They're just... I don't blame the team. I didn't blame, like Omar back in the day. I don't blame Agrenda and the guys now, but they just don't have the resources, I don't think, to deliver a good, consistent customer experience to the player base.
Out of interest with League, mate, how are they with, do they still do the live GM thing, or I don't know if that was ever a thing with them, or do they do the automated ticket system? How are their response times in terms of like I don't even know, because League doesn't have shit like item restoration or anything like that. Like, if you have an in-game issue, which is obviously not going to be a problem because it's a League game, it's over in 20, 30, 40 minutes or whatever anyway. Like, how does it all work?
So in League, I mean, the primary systems that you interact with Riot as a League player is one, like the reporting system, which is much more active and much more responsive than the reporting system in Blizzard. Usually, if you report someone and what they were doing was truly bad, you get a notification pretty quickly that they've either been chat restricted or banned. I forget exactly what the notification says, but it's pretty good, pretty high hit rate, I'd say, over the thousands of hours I put into it over the years. Sorry, go ahead.
Quick response times, was it?
Yeah, and definitely quick on that. That is automated, but the couple of times I've had to reach out to Riot, it's been through straight up email to their customer support, I think. And it's been things like, I accidentally redeemed some in-game thing for a free skin, but I didn't mean to. And I mean, it's not like Blizzard back in the day where it's 2 hours later and a GM is standing next to you. But, in a couple of days, it's always gotten rectified. And I can't imagine reaching out to Blizzard right now. And did I say Blizzard? I meant Riot. I can't imagine reaching out to Blizzard right now and having the same thing. Like, the one time I had to submit a really meaningful ticket to Blizzard was when we had an ATS shard drop, but it was unlootable, and it just never got fixed. We just didn't get that ATS shard, even though they obviously have everything they need to see that it dropped, that no one looted it, and that we ought to get it. And that's just not how their customer service works.
Go for it, Arcos.
Can I jump in here? I just want to talk about it because it's so on point. Last week I did a 25-man Uldur on my Paladin where I was the master looter and I was looting the fragments, Valnir fragments, to myself. And myself and the entire raid were certain that 4 fragments had dropped during the time of the run, but in my bags I only had 2. So I created a ticket where I stated I was the master looter, 4 fragments dropped, I looted them all to myself. When the run was over, I only had 2 in my bags. The response I actually got it within 48 hours. But he just told me the customer support team cannot swap or trade fragments. They must be looted by the intended and eligible raid member at the time of the kill. This is something which can be bypassed or made an exception on as a request, as it is a prestigious and powerful item. They could not originally be traded in Wrath of the Lich King either, so they cannot change it. Like, this is not something which can be bypassed or made an exception on. Then he just goes on to say it's not the answer you want, whatever. And I found it little bit funny, the response, because I clearly stated I was the master looter and I was looting them to myself. It's not an issue of I master looted it to a different person and now we can't trade it. Like, I think everyone knows you can't trade them. So the response time isn't dreadful, but they obviously don't really read what you're writing there.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into the ticket thing now. Let me just sound off on all the amazing stuff that you guys have opened with. And Waklo just started to touch on it there as well when he highlighted obviously names that we know like Omar and Agrand and just the classic team in general. And I wanted to say the following too, and I'm not doing this to fucking kiss ass or anything, but I just really want to sort of give my thoughts that I've had swimming around in my head over the last week or two regarding this topic. And I hit the guys up. Again, it's not a flex, but just to let you guys know, like, I'm fortunate enough to I mean, we all do actually. Fuck it, it's not a flex at all because everyone fucking has a pipeline to these guys. Agrend has been so open about like publishing his email address and being like, if you have issues with WoW Classic, like fucking, you can talk to me. You know what I mean? And people DM him on Discord all the time. And listeners of the show go, oh fuck, I reached out to Agrend and he like got back to me pretty quickly and we had a chat about an issue I had or something. Like, not customer service support necessarily, but just about, whatever they might want to, mention about WoW Classic, whatever it might be. But these guys have been, reasonably accessible. So I was chatting the other day to Agrand and Tim, and I let them know. I was like, hey guys, I'm going to do this episode taking a little bit of a shot at the customer service of the game, and they were really good about it. And they were like, do what you got to do, and it's one of those things that you kind of got to say to a certain extent, like, we accept all feedback, positive and negative. It's a good thing for the team to grow from, whatever you want to tell us about your bad experiences. But no, they were good about sort of being receptive to the fact that this episode was going to be a thing. But on top of that, what I wanted to say was there's multiple levels of attribution, if you will, as to why the situation is the way it is. And we're going to go through the specifics now of, like, after I finish with this, we'll talk about tickets, we'll talk about transfers, we'll talk about bots, we'll talk about gold selling, and we'll go through all those one by one. But when we talk about apathy or, whether it's the corporate blind eye or something a little bit more insidious than that, it's a multi-level problem where we start at the top with Activision Blizzard, right? And that's where you think of, like, that's what I'm talking about with, like, Bobby and the C-suite of Activision Blizzard, right? That's the top level of the we're taking the elevator all the way up. Then we go one down, and we get to, I mean, you could go many, many different ways with, like, shareholders and whatnot here, but let's just generalize a little bit. Bobby and the C-suite up the top of Activision Blizzard. Then we go one floor down, basically, and we get to Blizzard and the C-suite. That's your Mike Ibarra and the executives there, right? So we're flowing down in terms of the direction of the orders, right? Then Mike Ibarra sends the message down to, the WoW team, right? So, hey, WoW team, your Holly Longdales, your John Heights, we've received the message from Bobby, we're passing it on to you, blah, 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 blah. Then that level sends it on down to the Classic team, right? So that's your very, very stupidly oversimplified, perhaps mildly incorrect, my perception of the way in which, shit flows downhill, blah, 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 and then it lands on the Classic team. We've said for many years now, a long time, some people are very, very salty about this on Reddit, but I think it's unfair to heap a lot of these problems on the Classic teams themselves. When we talk about, like I said, people like Agrend, people like Tim, people like Chris, people like, all the QA team, everyone involved there. Artemis, this is the name I was looking for. They may feel a certain way about the game, but obviously have to do what has been instructed from on high. Now, if Bobby sits around one day and has a chat with his C-suite and goes, hey, look, we need to up some revenue and cut some costs, can you send the word down to basically make that a priority? Yeah, no worries, boss, we'll do that. Hey, Mike Ibarra, you need to up the revenue, cut the costs. Yeah, no worries, I'll get right on that. Mike Ibarra picks up the phone. Hey, Holly, John, WoW needs to up its revenue and cut its costs. Yeah, no worries, we'll figure out a way to do that. And then those guys pull aside the Classic team and say, hey, here's what we're going to do in our little corner of the Activision Blizzard family to help out with this company-wide edict of, raising revenue and cutting costs. And that might be along the lines of, hey, guys, we're going to completely gut any semblance of a customer service platform here. And we're going to be, we're going to have to sit here and just be okay with having a pretty fucking bad, customer experience. Because at the end of the day, we know that we can push them so far to retain that subscription, and we can probably push this far with this level of quality of customer service and retain X amount of dollars in sub fees, and we'll still be more than okay. Now, the Classic team might not like that news or being told to do a certain thing, and I would very much so guess that many members of the Classic team are very unhappy with the way in which things work customer service-wise. But that's just the way it is. It's not their decision. It's completely out of their hands. So I personally really do like to specify and separate Classic team from all those different levels, and sort of, even though what I said is completely, very, very basic shit about like, it's not like the classic team makes the decision to do a lot of this stuff. A lot of people don't kind of realize that or start there, or they generalize and start to really pile on the team. Now, again, I'm not trying to do this to kiss their ass. But I just wanted to start out with that level of understanding. So I think we've got a lot of diehard classic fans on the team who are players like us who fucking wish that they could put in, even though they work there, go with me on this one, put in a ticket and have something, happen in a reasonably fast manner. And I'm sure that there are members of the classic team that are fucking embarrassed of the fact that, someone like Ale's story, where they lost, they couldn't loot something from a Nax boss in October, and it took 3 to 4 months for that item to eventually be restored to them, to the point that they didn't give a fuck about it anymore because they'd already outgeared it, but they wanted it at the time, but it couldn't happen. So I point the finger more up the tree and sit there and I'm not going to, this isn't a naming and shaming thing, but like you definitely start to look above and go, look, here's where we need to look at as to these directions being made and why they're being done that way. But anyway, we'll move on. I'm kind of rambling now, but you guys get what I'm saying. What I wanted to get to now with the specifics was, let's talk about those tickets that you guys have alluded to. And obviously a decision was made quite some time ago. You guys might be able to help me out with roughly when this was with World of Warcraft. But, we all know about the cullings of the staff over the years, vast numbers going down over time in cost reduction efforts. And the fun in-game GM appearing by your side when you had submitted a ticket and, pretty quickly resolving your issue as best they could and having a bit of fun with you. Those days, we all remember them fondly, have been long gone for quite some time now. And we got to, and to be fair, this was not just Activision Blizzard. This was the world embracing this technology behind automation systems, outsourcing of customer service, chasing the cheapest price tag on some semblance of a human-to-human interaction to resolve an issue. Maybe it's not the best, but fuck, it's cheap. Yeah, let's do that. When that started to be brought in, obviously it's going to water down the experience and people start to grumble, but we've dealt with it. But in terms of WoW Classic, I told the story about Ale Arcos and the 3 to 4 month wait for the item, and you've told a story as well. Like, is the tick? My question is kind of, is the ticket system so far gone that, I mean, I personally don't use it that much. Even when there are instances that I'd like to use it, I unfortunately do the shoulder shrug and go, nothing's going to happen. It's not worth it, which is exactly what Blizzard wants. They're like, good, we've deterred you from interacting with our fucking customer service experience because it's so bad. That's one less headache for us to deal with. So focusing on the tickets, Arcos, like, kind of, how do you feel about that system now and the ridiculousness of it?
Well, yeah, like they laid off, I think, most of the people involved with customer service back in Q1 2019. They probably went to some sort of automatic system well before that, but that's the hits I'm getting on Google when they fired people. I think the thought process for them is that, at least for Bobby, to increase profit, you either increase your revenue or you decrease your costs. So,
or both,
or both at the same time, like, of course. But cutting staff, of course, will decrease your cost. Like, you don't have to pay these wages anymore. It's why we see, all these call centers in Asia, because the labor cost there is much lower than in most of the Western world, at least. I mean, I think that's the standard, like industry standard, is to have most of your customer support, like at least the front line, like the first interaction, outsourced to somewhere it's cheap, because so many of the issues, like, they stop there, they get resolved, they don't need to be addressed by an employee, that it's more costly to keep them running. So like I'm a person that really, like, I really understand. I wouldn't say understand, but I really like, finance and business. I wouldn't go so far as to call myself an expert, but I enjoy thinking and discovering about it. So I completely understand that fact. Like, Bobby's, he is beholden to his shareholders. His job is to maximize shareholder value, at least in the type of capitalism that we live with now. So, like, his job isn't to make good games. It's not to make, good customer service. It's not to make the customer feel good. It's just to make the shares of his company as valuable as he can possibly make them, so that the shareholder can realize that value. So, like, I understand why he has made the decisions that he has made. If you look at it from that perspective, the alternate perspective as consumer within, one of the companies in his umbrella of corporations, is that I believe we are kind of in probably the past 5 years at least, 2 or 3 years before COVID began. I would say that consumers have, there's been a little bit of a shift where they appreciate value. They're more willing to pay a little bit extra, or even, a premium for a good product.
Oh no!
Something
Don't
that's
give them
made
the
with
idea
care.
for the premium customer support package, Arcos.
No, no, not at all. I'm not talking about customer service here. I'm just talking, if you just think, about things that you purchase as a consumer within your economy, you're I think in a time frame, people became a little bit more ready to pay a little bit more for things that were well made or with good materials, etc. And I think it goes as well within gaming, that people are willing to pay for a game that is well made, that's well regulated, where you have, like, if I try to make an example, let's make hypothetical that, before Classic is released in 2019, let's say Omar does an interview and he says, "Hey guys, we've heard you loud and clear. People are very concerned with voting, with gold buying, with the automated system of reporting that, many remember from, the latest retail version that they happen to have played. We made a conscious decision. We're going to employ, 100 people in each region, and there will be game masters. They will log into the game and they will help you with issues. There will be a backlog. We're not, hiring 5,000 people. We're doing 100, and we're doing this because we've heard you." I think a lot of people would have loved that, and I think a lot of people would probably have been fine paying, $18 a month instead of 12 or 13 if they came out and they said, "Hey, we're willing to do this because this is what, concerns you, but it means something. It has an effect on our financials, so we need to spend money to do this. So are you willing to pay $2 more a month, $3 more a month to get this service?" I think a lot of people would say, "Yeah, I'm fine with that." If an employee is, available 24/7 to someone who makes a report, like, "Hey, there's a bot here doing something," or, "Hey, this person just bought gold," there's an employee that will, immediately grab that and do something about it to make the world, clean of this, terms of service breakage and all that. I think people would be fine paying a little bit more for it. So, like, that's kind of where I look at it as the consumer. Like, I don't mind paying a little bit more to get a better experience. But what I do mind is being forced to transfer because my gaming experience has been destroyed by poor decisions. Like, if we go into the server health thing, like, there's a difference between giving the proposition to your customer of paying a little bit more for better care and willfully destroying their experience with a cash grab and then forcing them to pay the same cash grab. Like, that's kind of where I view it. I've probably gone on a little
That's
bit
okay.
too long,
I'll turn to
Waklo,
Waklo, mate. I'll turn to Waklo, but thank you for that. I'll just say one thing just to comment on what you've said, Arcos, and we can come back to this another time. But I agree with what you're saying. I'm with you. Yes, people will generally pay a small percentage more for a more a cleaner experience, if you will. But I guess the thing that many people would balk at would be just the knee-jerk reaction of, well, yeah, while I'm happy to pay extra for a better experience with my product, it's an odd and bizarre bite in the ass to be asked to pay extra for things that used to be included in the ticket price. So like, we see many, many modern day examples of this coming up. And, one of the most outrageous ones now coming to the forefront of conversation is what's happening with the car industry, with things like, hey, if you want your seats heated, you've got to pay a monthly subscription fee for that, when it used to just come with the fucking car. And so like, I agree with you, but yeah,
sure. I would throw back though that the subscription amount has not changed since the game was launched.
That's not true. It went up in Australia in the relatively recent past.
It's still $12.99 here.
Okay.
It's still $14.99 in the US, and it was in 04.
Well, obviously they did the move. Yeah, I know that you're right. You guys are right. They've kept it the same in the major areas there. Yeah.
Like I understand what you're saying as well. Like this used to be included, and it isn't anymore. And like my kind of throwback to that is, the subscription fee is still the same, even with inflation. And at least for Classic, you're not buying the title. Like you just go in. Like if you just buy a running subscription of whatever retail is going on. You don't have to buy the retail game either. You just log in.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they released Shadowlands, we didn't have to buy Shadowlands. When they released Dragonflight, we didn't have to buy that. We just keep our sub. Like we're not paying anymore for they didn't charge us to log into TBC. They didn't charge us to log into Wrath. Like we didn't pay for the titles. We only paid for the sub. So even though this was a part of the deal back in the day, like things have changed a little bit since then. But I think people would be a lot more crazy if they came out and they said, "Hey guys, so we've adjusted for inflation, and the sub fee is $30 a month."
Oh no, absolutely. I see what you're saying. Waklo, we'll turn to you, mate. Let me just throw in some comments from the crowd. Spidey's mentioning, and he's probably dead on, when I mentioned the price hike in Australia, he said, Josh, that might well be due to exchange rates rather than the overall service price actually going up. Final Fantasy XIV had the same problem a few years ago in different countries. And I know that Blizzard did jack up the price in a lot of South American countries or whatnot. I think the price doubled in some places in the world. Part of that
mostly
was
South America.
Yeah, part of that was due to combating.
There was a glitch where, and I used it a few years ago. You could elect to pay, in Brazilian dineros or
the Argentina hack. Everyone knew it. Yeah.
It cut your price so far down. It was a bit ridiculous. So yeah, I know that changed.
I commented on the subreddit. I'm so sorry, Waklo. I'm going to get to you right now. You've been so polite and so kind to sit there and listen to us. I commented on the subreddit the other day. Someone mentioned that the old, just do the fucking Argentina account thing. I'm still doing it. And I commented on their reply and said I didn't call bullshit, but I wanted to call bullshit. But I was like, they got rid of that 2 years ago. You now have to have a credit card that has originated in that country to be able to subscribe under the auspices of that country. So unless you had a credit card that was grandfathered in, and let's say you subscribed in fucking, I don't know, March of 2021, and your credit card had 3 years left on the expiry date, then I think you could have still done the Argentina thing. But since then, if you've gotten a new credit card, in any way, shape, or form over the last couple of years. Like the Argentina like hack has become a dinosaur of the past. But Waklo,
I
so
do
you go on.
believe it's still possible. Sorry to cut in
Yeah.
again. I do believe it's still possible because they do accept PayPal. I won't go into how you do it. I can message you that after. But for people who know, I think it still is possible.
Okay, what is it? Life Finds a Way, Jurassic Park. All right,
Yeah,
Waklo.
exactly.
Everything you've just heard from us, Waklo. Let me just read this one point as well. I'm so sorry, Rackmore, absolutely great in pointing this out as well. Josh, a point in regard to this customer care issue. One has to understand this is a company, therefore there are different departments. This sounds like an operations department issue, which is always separate from the development department. Therefore, we can get the best updated iteration of the game, but this doesn't fall within the developer's realm. I guess we don't have any indication of who is in charge of their operations, and they're likely one whole team, i.e. retail and classic. Yes, completely agree with you, Rackmore. I would absolutely be of the belief that this is, like I said, it's not the classic team, that's the dev team. There's a separate operations department that runs all this, that's their thing. Waklo, mate, you've been the best. Everything you've just heard, do you have any comments, anything to add on? We started off on the tickets. We wound up here. Do you have any wild ticket stories? Do you have any commentary on the sub fee and everything we just talked about?
Yeah, there's a lot there. One thing that stuck out to me that Arcos brought up is that ultimately Bobby Kotick has a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders to maximize share value. And I think just because of the way that corporate cultures work, that like the churn of executives works, the average lifespan, at least in the United States, of a CEO is about 5 years. Now, Bobby Kotick has been at Blizzard for a lot longer than that, but I think that's because he's a pretty malevolent force. He's like uniquely bad. And I've seen on Glassdoor, like looking at Blizzard in the past, he's even within the company really pretty reviled compared to most large publicly traded companies. But the churn is about 5 years on average for your typical CEO. So a CEO comes in, they've realistically got a window of about 3 to 4 years to realize value for the shareholders, assuming you've got a pretty normal board. That's the incentive structure the board's putting on the CEO. So even if you think that something like good customer service, building quality products, putting a lot of polish on your games, in the long run maximizes the revenue that your company is gonna take in, even like relative to your cost structure. Even if you think that's the maximizing strategy, it's not the maximizing strategy on the time horizon of your typical CEO. And so there's no reason to put that into place. The CEO, unless you have a really good board, just doesn't have the incentive structure to do that. And I think that's a really tough barrier in the games industry in general to having great games come out of publicly traded companies. I mean, the publicly traded company, as much as I revile Nintendo, that I think puts out the best games on average is Nintendo. And Nintendo is famously hostile to its shareholders. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Well, to expand on that, Waklo, and we've lightly touched on it already, but you know, it's a great point you make regarding the fiduciary responsibility and, you know, just the whole publicly traded company aspect of it all. I was talking to North 2 days ago on what will likely, all of this will likely be on the same big 6-hour episode coming in the next day or two for everyone. But if you guys have already heard the North call, and I've published this one after it, which is likely what I'll do, we talked about how there was a point I made about MMOs will struggle in a position where they are asked to spend money to lose money. You know, anything now involving bots, gold selling, you know, all of this stuff, we don't have to go into the details. People know the word's been out on the street for some time now. Like, Blizzard makes money from all of this shit. Obviously, when a bot subscribes, cash in bank. When, you know, people are making gold readily and easily available for players to buy and not have to farm their own gold, it makes the game more accessible to people. They keep subscribing. This is all money in the bank for Blizzard. So the negative aspects of the game are absolute boons to the bottom line for Blizzard at the end of the day. So when we sit here and complain about them and say, hey, get rid of this shit, it's bad for the game, it's not how the game's supposed to be played, it breaks the rules, obviously it will be viewed through a certain lens, when again we are asking them to spend money, i.e. hire people to cull this issue that would ultimately result in them losing money. So it's a double loss for them at the end of the day. And this isn't just a WoW thing, every MMO coming will have to deal with this reckoning of how tightly are you actually going to police your game, and does the fairness or ethical quality of your game matter to you, or are you just going to sort of maybe turn a blind eye and do what it takes to bump up that profit? It's a big ask when you really do put it that way. I think some people might balk at that, like, Josh, it should be a big ask to be ethical, but it is a big ask for a publicly traded company when they're like revenue at all costs to a certain extent, asking them to do this. So Waklo, like, when I say something like, do you feel that, do you have confidence that MMOs in the future outside of WoW would go the extra mile to really tackle all of these issues that we've discussed? Do you have faith that would happen, or do you think they could fall down a similar trap that WoW Classic has?
Well, I think it really is tied pretty tightly to being publicly traded. Again, with the Nintendo exception, and maybe like Rockstar within Take-Two, I think you've seen a real cheapening across the board in terms of what Ubisoft's put out, what EA's put out, what Bethesda's put out, and what ABK's put out. Like, it's not confined to Blizzard. In terms of MMOs, to my mind, the premier MMO on the horizon is Ashes, and I don't know the details, but isn't Ashes basically a pet project of someone with a lot of capital at their disposal? Like, so
it's still a private thing. Yeah,
there's no real, I don't think there's even like an investor group that they're really answerable to. I think it's
the
more
bulk
of a pet
of the money.
project.
The bulk of the money, I think, came from Steven.
Yeah, and so in that case, he can put in whatever incentive structure on his team that he wants, depending on his personal, appetite for losses in the medium term. My view is that in the long term, if you make a game that respects its player base, again, not in the short term, but in the long term, you're just going to make more money because you're going to have more players.
Let me just throw in this comment. Waklo, while I'm saying this, let me know if you've got any wild and wacky ticket stories before we move on to the next topic. Martin is in chat saying, Josh, that's all fair, but certain maximizing efforts can actually be detrimental to long-term success of the company. I completely agree with you, Martin, and that's why I sort of threw in the cheeky caveat of to a certain extent. Like a game, or Blizzard or a developer can push the player base far to a certain extent before we cross the threshold of silly. So like, we can water down the customer service experience of WoW Classic to a point where it's deemed poor, but people will stay subbed. But I would fucking guarantee you that Blizzard has all the spreadsheets drawn up, or the data experts crunching the numbers of like, if we push to X degree, we will only lose Y amount of subs. Or, once you see that sub level seriously start to get affected, that's when you start to pump the brakes a little bit. But the problem with it's pretty specific to WoW in a weird way, as I've talked about in the past on the show, that WoW is the wonder drug and we're all addicts. And so, how far can you really push the junkie before they say that they're going to take their business elsewhere? It's a crude analogy, but I think it's still somewhat apt, that we are willing to be dragged across the coals a little bit more because we love the game that much, and Blizzard knows they can get away with a subpar experience. But of course, you're right, there is still a realistic threshold that could be, crossed or pooped on, where it just gets to the point where, like, this game is such a fucking shadow of what it used to be. Now the subs start to end en masse. We've just come nowhere close to that. Well, actually, that's not fair. Obviously, the game has lost millions of subs over
Yeah.
the years, but to a variety of reasons.
But it hasn't lost revenue because now it's a whale microtransaction funded
Well,
game.
yeah,
At the end of the day,
I don't think that
like
the customer service experience. I wouldn't cite the customer service experience as the top indicator of why the game has 8 million fewer players now. You know what I mean?
no, I think some of it's just the cyclical popularity of video game genres. But just touching on what you just said, I think at the end of the day, we're not even playing the product; we're playing an advertisement for the product. I have a hard time believing, given that sub prices haven't changed since 2004, that classic WoW subs, even in the aggregate, are a drop in the bucket of Blizzard's total revenue stream. I don't have the numbers, but I'd be shocked if we were really that significant.
No,
I think we're
I know
just
what you mean.
trying to fill the lulls in the retail schedule.
Mate, before we move on, do you have any wild ticket stories?
Not really. The ATS one is the only one that really sticks out. Back in the day, I remember I quit about 2 weeks after Original Wrath came out for, I was a kid and the sports season started and I just didn't have time. But I remember leveling. I did the Battle for Undercity quest line, and I don't even think there was a bug. I think I just got confused and I submitted a ticket, and a GM popped up next to me and teleported me to like the center of the city where you actually have to do the quest, and I got it done. And that was just a great memory from the end of my original time in WoW. And it's hard to think of that happening today.
Very good, very good. All right, Arcos, back to you, mate. Look, we started to scratch the surface of the transfer thing. Let's start to talk about it. Look, this was news, about 6 weeks ago now, whatever, as Hunk tells me to get off my phone on stream. And he's dead right. I'm getting DMs about this very conversation, Hunk. I'm trying to spin plates here. But I know it's very rude of me. I'm the worst. A shout out to Rouge, by the way, who sent me a message just then. Arcos is having a laugh.
He just messaged me as well.
He's in chat under an alias and interacting with us. So
He's
hello,
hiding
Rouge.
his identity so that he
is.
doesn't get picked up.
He is. Look, on the point of the transfers, faction transfers were opened up about, what was it? 6 to 8 weeks ago, whatever it was, 6 weeks ago. We've talked for a long time about the issues that faction transfers can cause, but then also you balance that against the demand for, why did I say that weird? Demand for fucking faction transfers. People have been kicking down Blizzard's door saying, fucking a grand, let me change faction, blah, 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 blah. So many people just going nuts about it. You had to do this service. But obviously, those of us who watch the game rather tightly would be aware that this service could be a very serious issue for certain servers. Yeah, you've got a lot of servers out there that are one faction only. Oh, it's not going to affect them, but there are some servers that aren't one faction only, and it could drastically affect them. The Gehennas and Firemore thing was the big news, the big example that everyone brought up. Now, I don't believe that either I think, God, you'll have to tell me, Arcos, which was the one that people were fearful was going to die as a result of this. Was it Firemore?
Yes.
Yes. I don't think Firemore has died as a result by any means, but there were some serious concerns. Arcos, can you talk us through that story of what happened and the concerns at the time and what the fallout, if any, has been?
Well, so for most of Classic, Firemore and Gehennas have been the two biggest servers on the EU side. And in TPC, respectively, the Alliance side of Gehennas and the Horde side on Firemore started dwindling away. It wasn't though until I kind of feel pretty late in TPC that the Horde side on Firemore left, and that was due to a bug, quote unquote, as well. But this instance, this recent one, was that Blizzard apparently had gotten their inboxes completely filled with people complaining that they couldn't play with their friends because they were on a different faction. And since now these two servers were mostly, 99% one faction, they were going to open up transfers. Both servers had been locked, for 6, 8, 12 months in the case of Pharma, I believe. So they decided to open both of them up in between each other. So if you were Alliance on Pharma, you could purchase a faction change and get a free transfer from Firemo to Gehennas and vice versa for Gehennas. So anyone who was playing Horde on Gehennas, they could purchase a faction change and get a free transfer to Firemo. The issue this poses for most players is that if you want to be cutting edge in PvE, you want to play Horde. They have much stronger racials, which results in a bigger raid DPS output than Alliance does. But if you want to play PvP, you want to play Human because they get an extra PvP trinket as their racial. So what we saw was that one of the most successful guilds when it comes to world firsts and speedrunning in the history of Classic for the past 3 years, Progress, they left. One of the top 5, top 10 guilds called Newman, they left. Another speedrunning guild called Security, they left. There's a whole list of guilds who want to be competitive on the PvE side of the game. They all left to go Horde. This was a perfect situation for them. I know there was another guild called Bisno. They left before this. They
left a while ago.
Yeah, they purchased boosts or leveled fresh characters on Golemak because they just saw we can't keep up with the competition if we stay as Alliance. So they got kind of cucked on this one because they left a few weeks earlier or a couple of months earlier. So the concern is that there's so many more people who care about the PvE side of things than they do about the PvP side. So one way you have dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of people leaving from Firemo to Gehennas because they care about PvE, while you have perhaps 50 or 100 people going the other way because they want to be competitive in PvP. Firemo lost about, I think, 7,000 raid locked characters during this time frame. That doesn't mean 7,000 individuals. It could be 3,000 individuals and all of them just play 2.5 characters, or I don't know what the ratio is to that, but it's 7,000 characters that raided every week who are now gone. In the same time frame, Gehennas, they went from, I believe, around 25,000 raid locked characters to 32,000 or so. So it's the same amount. It's 7,000 roughly. The concern was that there would be a lot more people leaving Firemo. I'm kind of not really shocked that it's this amount because there's always a lot of hangers-ons. There's a lot of people who were in GTKPs that these guilds ran, so they wanted to go with them because that's their entire gaming experience. That's their stick. They're not in necessarily a guild or playing with their friends. They just play in GTKPs hosted by these guys. And there's always a lot of people who do what the best people do. We see it on retail as well. 99% of players rating won't see a difference being a troll rogue or a human rogue. It's 1% DPS difference on simulations. The vast amount of people won't notice that in their rates. But they still do it because the best people do it. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. The time frame is, what you talked about, 4 to 6 weeks. The server is definitely emptier than it was, but if you have time to play in the evenings, there's enough to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a shitload of people. We're talking Gehennas right now, still last week 32,000 raid logs and Firemore 16,500.
Yeah. So the issue that people have with this is that this was so predictable. If Blizzard had sent out a press release, 2 weeks before, everyone would have been up in arms like, why the fuck would you ever think about doing this? Nota bene to allow people to play together that are on different factions. Let us play with our friends. I think it's a bit silly. It kind of just feels like a cash grab on faction changes. To be honest, because they would have known themselves, that the top guilds, this is what they wanted. This is the perfect thing for these handful of guilds that are competing for world firsts or world fastest runs. So it's perfect for those guys. It sucks a little bit for those of us who don't play, in the top 0.1%. And it was entirely predictable. So I'm kind of glad that it wasn't a bug like before, where the Horde side of Firemo all left because they could get a free transfer to Hydroxian Waterlords, who then had a free transfer to Razor Gore, who themselves had a free transfer to Gehennas. So I'm a little bit glad that they at least are up front with the veiled cash grab than having it a bug, an unintended one. But I don't think it's the be all and end all of Firemo. Like the server isn't going anywhere, I think.
But as
and I think that's
sorry. Let me just add into one thing, and I'll throw it to you, Waklo. Just as Rouge is adding in for flavour to what you said, Arcos, 7,000 free transfers at €30 a pop for a faction change after the fact, a measly €210,000 revenue for Blizz in that instance.
Yeah, exactly. It might be a little bit different. Like that's based on the cheapest option, which is just one-to-one. But there were bundles, and like one guy who played in my guild from like the entirety almost of vanilla, most of TPC, he plays in progress now and has done since midway through Black Temple. I know for a fact that he had 7 or 8 level 80 characters that he used in splits with his guild. So this wasn't cheap for those people who wanted this change.
Yeah.
But they gave out bundles like 3 faction changes for the price of 2, 6 for the price of 3, something like that. They still
weren't fucking cheap, those bundles. But anyway,
of course, like
it's
not cheap.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like it's just such an obvious cash grab because there wasn't really a way for them to guarantee 7,000 transfers in the close term near the end of a quarter, where inflation scares are all over the place and stocks are crashing and whatever. So it's a good way for them to pad the quarter for sure.
Waklo, I'm so sorry I cut you off, mate. Go for it on all of this Gehenna's Firemo stuff.
No, I'll say to start, I don't think it was a cash grab. And I think the best evidence of that is that they cut it off before Firemo could die. Because if they let it go another week, or certainly 2, I think everyone knows that it would have died. Gehenna's died over the course of 3 weeks. Gehenna's Alliance died over the course of about 3 weeks, and I think Firemo would have gone the same way.
It might have, but I'll throw in that I was invited to a Discord for like guild reps and stuff like that, and there was a guy who was reaching out to every guild that he could manage, and it looked like about 60 to 70% were a hard no, but
everyone's a hard no until the day they transfer.
Until they're not. Of course, it's not hard numbers or unchangeable numbers. So, sure, it could have died, a week later, but I don't know. To me, it feels that they just wanted to get some revenue in, and that's why they did it, because it's just so predictable that would have happened. Like, it wouldn't even surprise me if they premeditatively knew we will shut this down a little bit earlier. We're just going to say that the window is 2 weeks and then say we're going to close it a week earlier. Because if you asked anyone before this happened, like if they did this, what do you think would have happened? I think 99% of people would have seen, one of the servers is going to die. So I don't think it was a surprise to them, the reaction of the player base. I just don't.
I really think it's just incompetence.
You keep going with your thing, Waklo. I think you raised some good points.
Yeah, but I don't think Agrind and the guys are incompetent in this way. of course, I have no idea if they had anything to do with it, or if they could have said no, or if they were in on the decision making. Of course, we can't say. But I don't see that any of the devs wouldn't have known what was about to happen.
Waklo, anything else on that?
No, I think we've made our points pretty well. I'll just say they've done it repeatedly, and in past examples, like you talked about with the Gehenna's repeated transfer situation, they've done it in ways that don't even make them any money. I think that their prioritization of server parity and server health is pretty low. And that's one of the few criticisms I really put on the team themselves, because that's not coming up from on high. But I think it's their lack of prioritization on server health that leads to these things, not that they're getting an extra 250,000, because again, the amount of revenue this game as a whole is generating is not that large. One weekend of 250,000 doesn't even show up as a blip on a 10K from a company like Blizzard.
True, but I would balk at the suggestion that it doesn't necessarily come down from on high in terms of the server fuck ups. Well documented, from day dot of Classic. Yes, this wasn't all insidious. Some of it was just plain old simple server mismanagement. We're not really sure how many people want to play this game. Oh shit, there's a lot more than we thought. Let's roll out more servers. Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. Let's put out the fire. But there did certainly over time, it started to become apparent that the server mismanagement might not all be by accident. And there were certain things happening that, did seem to promote transfers and whatnot that rubbed the community the wrong way. Now, I'm not to do the tin. I don't think it's too tin-foily to say that I don't necessarily put that on the Classic team in a weird way, because I don't think it's some of it, yes, of course, but I don't think it's too bizarre to envision a situation where the producers of the game at the higher levels, again, your WoW executives as opposed to the Classic team, I could see them being made aware of what's going on revenue-wise with server capacities, transfers, what are we going to do, blah, blah, blah. And them being the ones to green light or red light certain initiatives to move the populace around, and being very aware of what helps make a bit of money and what does not. So I wouldn't say that. I would be shocked if the buck stopped with, like, Brian, let's say, during his tenure with server management. Like, I maybe I'm wrong on this one, and maybe someone from the Classic team will tell me I'm very wrong on this one, but I would have thought that that's something that's run upstairs and been like, hey, we're thinking about doing XYZ with the servers. What do you think? Oh, well, which one makes us a bit more money, on the sly? I just, that's my take on it. It might be a bit conspiratorial, Waklo, but I don't know.
I think I just generally don't tend to view what the team does as responding to financial pressure. And this could be very wrong, but mainly because there's not that much stuff to buy in the game. They have the packages you can buy associated with each expansion, and now they have transfers and faction transfers. But I feel like if there was a lot of pressure to increase revenue from Classic WoW, you'd see a lot more microtransactions, or at least tokens.
But don't you think that's a great point, though? Almost to help bolster my argument, in that you're spot on, mate. There's not that much to buy in this game. This is not retail WoW. We don't have all the cosmetic shit, blah, 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 blah. They've been staring at Classic going, fuck, how do we monetize this fucking thing? Like, what do we do with it? It's a different game. The player base will only stand for so much. What can we and can't we get away with? And that has sort of fostered this culture of the slightly underhanded alternate revenue of fucking with the servers and the transfers and we've got the faction transfers and the server transfers and everything. And my point for a while now has, and again, some might call it tinfoily, and that's fine, but my point has been like, WoW Classic has made so fucking much money without a legitimate cash shop, for cosmetics and whatnot. to the point that Holly had only been there for like a year and a half and got promoted to producer of World of Warcraft on the whole. She was doing such an amazing job in the eye of the Blizzard C-suite that she got this amazing promotion because that's how much fucking money Classic was bringing in, even without the traditional quote unquote purchases being made. So they found a way to finagle and funnel the money in different ways that they must be swimming in it. I mean, that's, again, maybe it's me being a bit crazy. I don't know.
I agree.
What I just find confusing is if there's pressure to make significantly more revenue from Classic, why don't they flip the Spectral Tiger button when TBC launches and say, for $30 you can buy a digital trading card and have a Spectral Tiger?
That's a fair point. That's a very fair point. That would have been easy money.
If I can jump in, I think they've come to the decision that their subscribers, like the consumer to this product, isn't interested in the cash shop. If we look at Ironforge.pro, which just crawls Warcraft logs and just checks how many characters get logged, we get 433,000. If we divide that by 2 and we assume that 50% of that are accounts and the other 50% is alts, which I would think is not the case. I would think there's less alts, but let's just be conservative. If there's 216,000 subscribed accounts, that's 2.8 million euros in a month in subscriptions. So 200,000 over a weekend in transfers isn't all that big. If they really wanted to monetize the game, they would have kept people subbed. They wouldn't have made these dumb mistakes with servers. They wouldn't have made decisions that drive people away from the game. They would have done something to keep them subscribed. I wrote about this a while ago. I think early in Classic, they made a decision, like the higher-ups, the C-suite, they made a decision that this game wasn't going to last. There weren't going to be people joining it in later expansions. It's definitely not going to go for 3 expansions because they would have kept people subscribed, because that's guaranteed income. A subscription is guaranteed for a month. If you unsign, you unsubscribe. If you buy 3 months or 6 months, you've already paid in advance. Doesn't matter if you unsub during that time frame, you've already paid. If they were to release the Spectral Tiger, how big a percentage of people do you think would buy it? I don't think it would equal 10% of subscriptions. It would need to be so expensive to equal that. With the server management, my tinfoil hat theory is that their internal metrics are telling them that the game is going to die in the near future, in the next 12 to 18 months. It's going to be, the sub revenue is going to be so low that they'll just cut it, or they'll make some drastic changes. So they are trying to socially engineer people onto the same server so they can just start shutting servers down to save costs, because why else would you make this mistake if it were a mistake? But yeah, regarding the cash and the monetization, the biggest monetization they can do is to have people subscribed, because it's guaranteed income.
Fair enough. All right, guys, let's move on. I'll just tell my very, very quick sob story about the faction transfer thing, and then we'll move on to the bots. We don't have too much longer to go. I said to you guys this one would be about 90 minutes max. We're at the 90-minute mark. I just want to touch on really just bots and gold selling before we go.
Fuck that, dude. Let's go 6 hours.
That's the spirit. Waklo, I know you've got to head off in about half an hour or so. I won't keep you too long, mate. Look, just my story on the faction transfer thing. I mentioned this on Twitter and in the I actually haven't really mentioned it in the Discord. So I'm basically no longer with my guild, sadly, because they did the faction transfer thing and server transfer thing, because Oceania, we've got the 2 PvP servers. We've got Yojamba and we've got Aragul. Aragul's been the biggest server since day dot. Yojamba's kind of been the little brother the whole time. I was having such a lovely time on Yojamba the last sort of year and a half or so. The alliance was small. It was about, it was about 40% of the population on about a 3 to 4K large, 3 to 4K sized server. So it's a smaller server. 40% alliance. They introduced the faction transfer, and you can guess what happened. The alliance hasn't fallen apart yet. I think it's trying to hold on, but it's very obvious that a lot of guilds left. They are now starting to leave in droves, I think. And I just think that the death knell for the Yojamba alliance is coming in the next couple of weeks. My guild left, and basically I love the guys to death. It killed me to say this. I've really enjoyed, hanging out with them, raiding every week. But I've just been like, look, I'm a weird guy. I've got a weird. You've heard me talk about PvP. I've got a weird set of principles, and I wouldn't really call it ethics. I'd just call like principles. And whether they're right or wrong, I tend to stick to them. And I was just like, it feels really weird to me to reward Blizzard for blowing up my server. Now, I don't necessarily hate Blizzard for doing this because, like I said on another call, I think, you can't introduce faction transfers and not enable it for everyone. If they said, hey, these servers get faction transfers, but like these ones don't, I think the customers would be very, very upset. And whilst a faction transfer on a server like Yojamba they knew what was fucking going to happen. They knew, like Arcos has said, this stuff is more than predictable. The classic team knows this server's faction will die if we introduce this paid service. But we have to give it to everyone. So let's roll the dice and see what happens. And, we all know what was going to happen, and it's happened. And I just said, no, I know a lot of people have done it over the years, and I know when your server dies, when your faction dies, you just pay the fee and you get off. Look, I'm lucky enough that I've got characters all the fucking over the place in Wrath. I've got, I've got my Grobs character, I've got my Aragorn characters, I've got Yojamba characters, I've got fucking people everywhere. And even if I didn't, I would have just leveled a new one. But I've said I'm not. I even though obviously I've got the money, but I'm not going to sit here and say like, $70 is not a large amount of money. To some people it is. But I've got the money to pay, but that's not the fucking point. I am not rewarding this fucking behavior. I'm not saying here's your prize for killing my server, and now I can't play with my guild anymore. Here's, a little bit of something in your pocket to make sure I can keep playing with the guys. No, I'm not doing it. So I've basically raid retired. I've left my very geared 80 shaman on Yojamba, and that's it. And, like I said, I'm not seething with anger over this, but it's regrettable and it's unfortunate and it does suck. And this is the first time this has happened to me when it's happened to so many of you over the years as well. And it feels like it leaves a very bitter taste in the mouth when server mismanagement results in you having to fork over your hard-earned cash to solve their issue. So yeah, I just wanted to get that off my chest and say, like, I've had a negative experience with the faction transfer stuff too. It wasn't just all Gehennas and Firemore. There were ramifications outside of that too. But anyway, guys, let's move on. Let's talk about bots. I brought this up with North. We got the news. 120,000 accounts were banned about 10 days ago. Now, I want to say someone pointed, there was a small comment on the subreddit that someone made. It was a little bit snarky, but their point remains. On rereading this, I think they actually made the right point. I think this was more than classic. The way they worded the news made it sound like this was across the board, retail, Wrath, classic era, everything. 120,000 World of Warcraft accounts, not necessarily classic accounts, were banned for botting behavior. How many of those were classic era? How many of those were Wrath? I don't know, but that's just the figure we got. Great, right? On the face of it, fantastic. That's the kind of ban wave we want to see. And it's nice seeing ban waves outside of a fucking launch window. We've seen Blizzard do the thing where, just before TBC comes out and just before Wrath comes out, let's do a mass ban wave. And I've equated it on the show before to being the move that the city does before the Olympics. Oh, shit. Let's fucking, get all the homeless out of the city to convince the world we don't have a homeless issue. That Blizzard's basically just trying to clean up their servers and being like, hey, all you new people who want to play Classic, look at this. There's totally no bots. And they did those, very timely cleanups and then nothing mid-season. But, here we are in, well beyond a launch, and they did a massive ban wave. Golf clap. Thank you, Blizzard. That's great. The issue has been that it's not all congratulations and slaps on the back. It's caused so much concern amongst the player base because people are like, fuck me dead. If you banned 120,000, how did we get to that? How did we get to 120,000 in the first place? And how many did we not catch? Like this botting issue, we all knew it was crazy, but that is an insane figure. It really is, how do we let it get so bad? But people are already reporting in the 24 hours to many days since the announcement, hey, man, look at this BG. Here's a screenshot. The DKs are still out there. Hey, man, you might have banned 120. You might have 120,000 more to go. And Blizzard, Brian's been on the show saying, look, you're never going to solve the botting issue. These things are insane. They pop up like weeds. You can never eradicate bots from a server. But obviously the Classic player base's response has been, well, at least we want to fucking see you try and give it more than just a weak attempt. We want to see an ongoing effort to rid the servers of this. I'm rambling, guys, but I'll throw it out to you guys. Waklo, actually, I might start with you. What was your reaction to this news? Have you seen many bots around since? And weaving in the BG's discussion, and they had to do something because people were complaining so much about the death of battlegrounds, or at least leveling battlegrounds, the 60 to 70 battleground, the 70 to 80 battlegrounds and all that shit. How did you feel about it?
I think in terms of the battlegrounds, having played a couple of AVs since, what used to be 25 death knights has now turned into 10 to 12 death knights, so they're, I think, noticeably fewer bots. And even doing some dailies and other BGs, there's fewer bots, but there's still a lot more PvP bots than you had even in prior expansions. If you'll let me go off on a little bit of a tangent,
yeah,
I actually don't think bots are nearly as big a problem in Wrath as they are in Classic or TBC, but especially in Vanilla. The biggest problem with bots until very recently is that they just totally fuck up the economy. They make gold selling a lot easier. They make resources a lot less scarce than they'd otherwise be. They make the supply of gold way higher than it should be for the design of whichever X pack they're in. But I played on Firemaw until a couple of weeks ago, and Firemaw was locked at the beginning of the expansion until quite recently, and we had very few bots, relative to any server I've played on at any point in Classic. And the economy still was completely destroyed by the end of Phase 1. I think Wrath just doesn't have a meaningful in-game economy in the way the other two of the original trilogy do. Everything is so cheap, so plentiful, and if you do a couple of dailies, once a week, you really have everything you need to go raid and get your enchants, get everything you need. The economy is just basically gone from the game. And so I don't think bots are actually that big of a deal, but that sort of just ties into a broader issue that I have with Wrath.
What about if I tie in the mention of the rise of the GDKP and the way in which players have generally started to lean on going to GDKPs and needing the money to go to these GDKPs and then relying on the bots for that money?
Yeah, that's a problem, but I almost don't view that as a game economy problem. Gold is almost now just a proxy for real world money. And that's an issue that gold buying is happening, but it's not disadvantaging the players who don't buy gold in the same way it did in prior expansions because everything is so cheap. In Vanilla, the widespread gold buying really hurt players. If you were just if you were a warrior who wanted to do jump runs with their paladin friend and disenchant, and that's how you wanted to make gold, you needed to do that for 5 hours to get your flask because of gold buying. There's nothing like that now.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at though is, and I'm not being too cheeky here, mate, but the players have created their own economy now via the GDKP. And when you say everything's so cheap, yes, I'm thinking more of raiding gear, right? Where yes, technically it's free. You can go join a guild that just does a traditional raid, and that's fine. But the prevalence of GDKPs has now put a price tag for many players on these items, and they are far from cheap, going for like gold cap or multiple gold caps for some items.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I guess what I'd ask you in response is what would the benefit be of cracking down on the bots and reducing the supply of gold in the current environment?
In a Wrath environment, I do understand what you're saying in terms of, yeah, if you banned bots, all you would do, and that's a fair point. Like my issue with, oh, you've got this player created GDKP system, well, that would all now bend around whatever you give it. So if you ban the bots, now nobody's got any money. That would now settle down a little bit. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, like maybe Flare now goes for $60, and that's 400,000 gold. And if they banned all the bots, it would be 150,000, but it might still be $60.
Arcos, what do you have to say on any of this?
I think it's a problem from not day one. I think bots became a problem around Blackwing layer back in vanilla. It's kind of when I started to really see a lot of them. I don't think gold is as valuable in Wrath as it was in the previous two expansions, for sure. But I think a big part of that is layers in the beginning of the expansion. Like I tried to herb in Sholazar Basin, in the first 2-3 weeks, and with 13, 14, 15 layers, like herbs weren't valuable enough to bother. Add in bots, like it's the traditional gold making ways are just, they're not there anymore. The effort you need to put in and the time you need to put in isn't worth the amount of gold that you're getting by the end. For sure, I at least, most of the people I play with knew that gold wasn't going to be as valuable in this expansion as the previous ones. I don't think GTKPs would change a lot as a result of a complete ban. Like if he just, if Bobby, lifted a finger and said like, yeah, let's get rid of all the bots, like the GTKPs wouldn't go anywhere because GTKP is just a superior system of playing the game than doing pugs or software server runs. Like you can make an argument for guilds because you're playing with friends. But at the end of the day, if you raid for 3 hours, or 5 or 6 or whatever, and at the end of it you have nothing to show for it, or at the end of it you get a lump sum of gold that someone else has paid for items, like it's just superior. I don't think they actually banned 120,000 bots. I don't really believe that they would ban 120,000 bots.
You want the receipts.
Still, sorry?
You want the receipts.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's possible to ban 120,000 bots, and within hours people are posting screenshots of battlegrounds full of bots. Usually, when there are bot ban waves, we see an increase in price for like raw materials that bots farm. We definitely saw that on Firemaw when the server was locked and there was a ban wave when Sunwell Plateau was released. There was a 20 to 50% increase in costs, across the board, mostly on raw materials. We haven't seen that here. Like nothing's changed at all. So like Waklo says, like the value of gold is just less now, so it's not as big of a deal for the economy. You can do dailies, 2 times a week, and you have enough gold to pay for your raiding needs if you're a raider. The kind of gold thing is just, it's so weird. Like anyone can go onto g2g.com and find a seller in their server, and they'll see, successful 99% of the time. So like how long has it been since you read on Discord that someone was banned, like when they shouldn't have been, like they got a false ban or something for buying gold? I haven't seen it, since the middle of TPC maybe. So I don't even think they are monitoring it at all. I don't think they do anything. I haven't heard of anyone being banned for gold making or gold buying. I have heard of people being banned, for AFKing in battlegrounds, because that's an automated system, I believe now. If you get enough reports that you're like AFKing in BT, you get, a suspension of a week or something. But I don't really think they do anything about gold buying anymore. And I don't really believe that they banned 120,000 bots. I don't believe GTKPs are at fault. There's a lot of people who say, if there weren't GTKPs, then people wouldn't buy gold. That's completely false. Back in vanilla, there weren't GTKPs until, by the very, very end. People still bought gold just, to buy their herbs and their potions and their flasks, So I think even without GTKPs, people would buy gold. They wouldn't buy it to the same extent. But if people couldn't buy gold, they would still do GTKPs because they'll find superior ways of farming gold so that they can exchange it for items, because it's superior to doing, a 5-hour shitty run and having nothing at the end because you were unlucky on your softer server rolls. So, people shouting into the ether, if they had banned GTKPs day one, we wouldn't have a bot problem. Like I think that's completely false. But I will certainly allow that the like want of any type of monitoring, like if you put GTKPs together with rampant bot, of course you're going to get incredible inflation of gold, and the economy is going to be in the toilet. That's just what we've seen in the past 3 years, and I think once everyone quit, one by one, they'll reflect back on their time and they'll think, this was handled like exactly as it shouldn't have been. It was a complete failure on the end by Blizzard, and it'll leave a sour taste in the mouth of most people who have been affected by it in any way. And I think that's the majority of players.
Just on your point about not catching all the bots, I mean, I agree with you, obviously. I don't think by any, even if I didn't hear what I'm about to say, like I would have said, yeah, I doubt they got the majority of them. But, I had a listener reach out to me after the ban wave and said, if you're at all interested to know, only 2 of my 5 bot accounts were caught in the ban wave. So they thought that obviously they dodged a bullet and they were happy. They were happy with that result. They were like, if I only lose 40% of my working force, then that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, they're definitely. We don't need just the battleground screenshots. Like, we know they're still out there en masse. The ban wave was not anything close to a majority. There's still a huge botting problem with this game, and. Arcos, I just want to bring it back to something you mentioned earlier as well. I talked with North about the timing of this ban wave as well. And again, I hate that I always preface this, because at a certain point, I probably just have to admit to being a tinfoiler rather than always saying, like, I'm not trying to get too tinfoily on you guys. But, the timing of it does reek of something having to do with the end of the quarter as well, because it was accompanied with the news that bots were banned and you were no longer going to be able to create a level 55 DK without a level 55 character as of next week or something. They gave them a full week to go out and create their last 55 DK on a newly subbed account or whatnot. And this was announced in, on the 20th of March or whatever, just before, I believe Blizzard financial quarters go by the calendar year. And, just before the end of March of Q1 2023, that would be a way to lift up, to bump up things a little bit, getting the botters to subscribe again on a new DK just before the rules change. Do you think I'm going too far with that, Arcos, or do you think there's meat on the bones? North said he agreed. Do you think he thinks it's fair to raise that point?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I don't believe any legitimate agency who's trying to curtail an activity would ever give their target, a week's heads up, like, hey guys, this lane of drug shipments, from point A to B, we're going to close it down in a week. So haul your trucks through now before the deadline when we, put up a checkpoint at the bridge. I think it's an incredibly dumb take by them if they want to have any credibility left around, actually wanting to ban bots. And, like we discussed earlier, like they have no financial incentive at all to ban bots whatsoever. I would go, if I put my tinfoil hat on, I would go, farther, and I would say that they have, one of their hands in the business of selling gold. I wouldn't be surprised if they were getting, some kind of crumbs, because it just doesn't make sense that they would give them a week's heads up. Like, sure, the only kind of way I could see where it's, the smart move is that they would monitor every 55 DK created after that announcement, and in a month's time ban all of them. That's kind of the only, reverse rule that they could have done. Like, let's ban a lot now, as many as we, financially can lose in subs for this quarter. Give them a week's heads up. Any 55 DK created from the timing of that announcement, we'll monitor for 4 to 8 weeks or whatever time frame they decide, and by then we'll ban them, so that we get, one more purchase in for the financial guys to put in their little book, and then we'll get rid of them. But still, they don't really have a financial incentive to do that.
I'll turn to you, Waklo. Arcos, I'll just say that I appreciate the size of your tinfoil hat. I see it is bigger than mine.
Thank you. That's what all the girls say.
Now let's see how you handle it. No, I've definitely seen that theory floating around over the years. I am hesitant to dive that deep in the pool, only because whilst I wouldn't put it past Blizzard to want to dip their fingers in as many pies as possible, I am hesitant to sign off on that one, just because it would require the existence of some form of, like, big botting big botting industry or big botting corp that they could actually hit up to conceivably take a cut. Like, my understanding is botters are just all over the place. They're just, guys sitting in their basements doing their thing, blah, blah, blah. I don't think there is any one entity or umbrella that they operate under that Blizzard could conceivably get in contact with to organize a shady deal with. So, and also the number 2 point is, I really don't think that botting makes enough money that Blizzard would be interested in taking a cut and risking this news getting out for the paltry amount that they'd get for it. But I mean, that's just me. Waklo, you've been a voice of reason throughout this podcast. Please feel free to tell Arcos and I we're fucking idiots, but how do you feel about the timing of the bot announcement, and whether you felt there was anything, slightly underhanded attached to it, like Arcos and I have intimated?
I actually think Blizzard shot John F. Kennedy.
I mean, we can't disprove it.
Yeah, we have no proof of it not being that way.
Yeah, my best guess is
Bobby that day.
Yeah. My best guess
that should be the title, by the way, Joss.
What should?
Sorry, Waklo, go for it.
No, sorry. Yeah, I basically think, kind of tying in what you said earlier about they're spending money to lose money if they really address the bot problem. My best guess is internally they have a sort of quota for the percent of the player base that are bots at any given time, and that there's just sort of implicitly not a lot of push to get much below that quota, and that the ban waves come, probably at opportune times, in terms of maximizing the money they get from the bots while keeping the level around that quota. I don't think that's even that tinfoil hatty to say that they're not making every best effort. They could obviously assign, I think with 5 people looking manually at individual servers, you could crack down on the bot issue by like 80%, if not more. And the fact that they're not doing that speaks volumes. That's all I'll say on it.
Fair enough. And Hunk's all over it with the Simpson shout out going as far as like, it's how deep are we going to go with the tinfoil here? Like the Rand Corporation, in conjunction with the Saucer People, under the supervision of the reverse vampires, with Bobby Kotick. I think we can now add to that one. Guys, we'll move right along. So that's the bots done. Look, the last point really is just the gold selling. We've already kind of touched on it, but like, you know, this is always going to be a problem. You know, a private server launched yesterday, and fucking day one, you see the advertisements. No server, be it, you know, Blizzard or private or whatever game you have, if it's a live service game, whatever, is going to be rid of gold selling. Like, people want it. You can't fight the demand. It is there. People want to kick their heels up and do nothing and not farm their gold. They want to buy it, get it over and done with, and it's done. Gold selling has become beyond obscene at this point. Obviously, it's ridiculously cheap, but the amounts of money that are moving around are fucking ridiculous, and people have never been more prepared to buy it. We've got all this chatter about a season of Mastery 2 that we want to see announced hopefully sometime soon, and everyone's excited for another go at Classic, blah, 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 blah. But with that is obviously going to come the new problems of not only bots, but gold buying in that instance as well. Just let me know if either of you two have any particularly strong feelings about the gold buying industry in general. And look, I mean, you don't need to say anything, but I've always been like, I'll take the fucking, you know, I'll take the lie detector, the polygraph any day of the week about whether or not I've bought gold in WoW Classic. I have not bought a fucking dollar. It's just, I'm not into it, whatever. The game doesn't mean that much to me. I don't feel the need to keep up with the Joneses. Fucking, I don't care. I farm it the old-fashioned way. I farmed it all in Classic, and I've been living off of that amount since. Now, I have no particularly vindictive words to say to people who buy gold, because the fucking long and short of it is a lot of you do. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you an in-game piece of shit, as I've always said. But, you know, there might be pieces of shit on this call with me. I don't know. There might be pieces of shit listening. But as I say, guys, this is all very tongue-in-cheek. And I'm like, you know, some people do it to keep up with the Joneses. Some people do it because they value their time. And a lot of people, unfortunately, have said at this stage of the game, if you're not buying gold, you're the fucking idiot, which might have a bit of sad truth to it. How do you guys feel about gold buying, and how do you feel about, you know, the players who do it and its place in not just WoW, but MMOs moving forward?
As someone who's also never bought gold, I wish more people had that outlook, because the problems with gold buying, beyond like the unfairness of some people having more, like the economy-wide problems, all stem from it being widespread, not it existing at all. And if 80% of the players just chose to never buy gold, there'd be much less of a need for the remaining 20% to buy gold. But that's not the choice everyone made. So yeah, I'm disappointed. And I hope that with whatever refresh we get soon, we'll have a period of time where it's prohibitively expensive to buy gold, and we can have a, you know, relatively well-functioning economy again. To give more of a hot take, though, I don't think gold sellers are that shitty of people. I know you have the opposite take, but a lot of gold sellers live in countries where they don't have a lot of great options to make a living wage. And I think if you're in that situation and you can make 4 times the amount of money you'd make in, you know, whatever hard manual labor job or whatever customer service job or whatever's available to you, you know, boosting people in a video game, I don't think the game should be set up to let them do that, but I don't actually blame them personally for that.
And I agree with you. I mean, I call them pieces of shit, but in the grand scheme of things, on the scale of pieces of shit, on the 1 to 10 sliding shit scale, you know, I've got them relatively low. And unfortunately, that is just because of the prevalence of it and the amount of people that do it, and how, unfortunately, passe it has become to purchase gold in the game, that we've all had our senses numbed to not only the fact that it happens, but the quote unquote criminality of it. It's effectively become a misdemeanor. It's become getting caught with a joint in your pocket, where nobody really fucking gives a shit, but technically it's a crime. I obviously want to get to Blizzard's response on it, and that's the point of bringing this up in the context of this call. But I would call someone who ganks someone at 5% health and one shots them a far bigger in-game piece of shit than a person who buys gold in this day and age. But that's the weird state that it's gotten to. Arcos, how do you feel about all this?
Yeah, I don't really like at this point. I don't really care anymore. Like, the cat's out of the bag. Nothing's going to happen. No one's going to be held accountable. I cared a lot more in Vanilla Classic. I cared a little bit less in TBC, and by this point, I don't really care. I was perfectly fine making my gold on the auction house. I enjoy markets. I enjoy thinking about material cost and how you can manipulate the way people use their own money into buying your things for more than you bought them for. I've been recently quite close to gold cap. I have nothing to spend it on, so like at this point I don't really care about gold. I helped a friend on his fresh warlock doing a skip run in Nux, and I bought the cloth legs on my DK for 15k because I was bored, and then gave it to some guy. So like that's kind of my situation. I don't really care. I don't sell my gold though. There have been people in my guild who have had multiple gold caps by legitimate ways of just playing the game and making gold, and they have sold their gold to other players. I don't really have a problem with it anymore. Like, it's just become so ingrained in the way the game is played that like you kind of say that if you're not doing it, you're the kind of idiot. But I don't really agree. But at this point, it's just too far gone for me to care.
But
if
that's
we were
the problem.
still, in
That's
Classic,
the problem, is our
where
apathy.
I'm getting world buffs and I'm using 15 different consumables and worried about my buff cap. I care a lot more at that point. But now I don't really.
My point on this, though, and I really want to, we'll sign off on this call, but just by talking about Blizzard's response to gold buyers. My point on this is kind of, it sucks that I'm hearing this from you. I'm hearing it from me, Arcos, about our apathy towards gold buying, and that apathy has been contributed to by also a lack of action by Blizzard. Now, we all sit here and just go, oh, gold buying, it's a thing. We've just got to fucking move on and deal with it, because Blizzard has basically determined it's a crime that they will elect not to punish, an in-game crime, obviously, terms of service and all that shit. And it baffles the mind as to, you guys have both talked about this, the amount of obscene amounts of gold getting mailed around on such a fucking regular basis from the old level 1 character or whatnot, to the point that people will flaunt it. Like you say in chat, it's been a thing for years now in Discords, in game, people flaunting the fact that they do this, because there is zero threat of repercussions. It is the Blizzard has been beyond a toothless tiger on this issue, and I think that's, probably euphemistically, a shame. It's a huge shame that it's gotten to this stage, that they basically said, whether it's a resources issue or whatnot, and obviously I'm guessing it is probably a resources issue, that look, we don't have the people to be able to look at this thing, so yeah, we've got the terms of service there, hopefully that deters people, but if you do it, fucking nothing's going to happen to you. And yeah, okay, maybe a few gold buyers get caught up in the net, but percentage-wise, it's nowhere near enough. And so you're a victim of your own policing apathy, in that the whole culture of your game has changed because you can't be a fucking effective deterrent. I don't know. It's a shame.
Yeah, like I agree that like we have become numb because we don't see, any repercussions for doing what you aren't supposed to. And like there are two instances I remember when people near to me purchased gold. Once was like the first week after Arathi Basin was released, way back in Classic Vanilla. I'm ranking, I'm spending way too many hours in front of the PC, and the guy I'm with, he wasn't using consumes properly like we, were expected to do. And he said, okay, after this game, be right back, 5 minutes, logged back in, 6K in the mailbox. He would keep playing. That was the first time anyone admitted openly, at least to me, in Classic, where they bought gold. Nothing happened to him. He went on his merry way. Second instance is a week before Black Temple was released. I was playing on my alt in a different guild, and the main tank in the guild, he says, "Shit, I just got banned." And everyone was like, "What the fuck did you do? Did you AFK in a battleground?" And he's like, "No, I didn't have enough gold, to prepare for the release of this raid. So I went online and I bought gold." And they was like, "How fucking much did you buy?" And he said 30K. And 30K wasn't, chump change.
That was a lot back then.
In the middle of TPC, that was a respectable amount. Everyone laughed at him like, "You're the fucking dumbest person alive to order that much in one go." And he was like, "Yeah, I'll update you guys." The day after, the ban was he got the time frame of the ban, and he was to be unbanned like the day before release of BT. Roll up to that time, he logs in, he still has 30K gold in his mailbox. Like, how can anyone expect us to care about bots and gold buying when you either don't get caught? If you get caught, you still keep the fucking gold that you bought. Like, how can anyone expect us to take it seriously? Like, even when they do a press release, like, "Hey, we banned 120,000 bots," like, I'm still thinking, like, yeah, so fucking what? Like, you'll just let another 120,000 in, and you won't discipline anyone who breaks the terms of service. Like, why should I care at that point? Like, when they so obviously don't.
Fair enough. Well said. Look,
Yeah.
Sorry, go Waklo.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, like that's kind of the place I'm in now.
No worries, no worries.
Yeah.
Let me just say, and we'll wrap this one up, guys. Tim mentioned this in chat, and Tim was supposed to be on this call, but had something come up, so it's all good, mate. We'll get you in on the next one. But he was good enough to add this to something that was mentioned earlier, and it's one of my big things as well. It does sort of raise an eyebrow from me and set me off a little bit when we do the thing about gold selling. Sometimes people raise the excuse, and I've had many friends over the years raise this excuse about gold buying, saying like, "Hey man, I'd rather give the money to some poor bloke, working his ass off for a few dollars in Indonesia, feeding his family. I'd rather give him the money than Blizzard," or some shit like that. Like, that excuse does come up a lot. But as Tim points out, it's actually a rather large misconception about the gold buying industry, and sort of like more insidious factors of online behavior in general as well, in terms of like there's documented instances in the past, and Tim's linking some articles from The Guardian and ProPublica from years ago about like the prevalence in Asia and Southeast Asia of having people involved in like the human traffic industry and whatnot, forcing people, like kidnapping people and forcing them into engaging with things like gold farming and cyber scamming and whatnot. And it's a fucking really big deal, and it still happens. And it's not always just, Johnny, the 22-year-old unemployed Indonesian guy who's looking to help put food on his table for mum. It's actually sometimes, far worse than that. And your money isn't necessarily going to help feed a family. it's going towards a larger operation that's got some pretty bad shit going on. So, yeah, that excuse only goes so far. There's a bit more to it and far more meat on the bones at the end of the day. Tim, I hope I did that point justice. Please do let me know if I fucked anything up there. But no, I definitely am aware of that. But look, guys.
Can I ask you guys then, like, after you just, went through this, like, okay, let's assume that if you go onto any website, third-party affiliate, which is supplying, game tokens, gold, whatever, let's say all of them are, human trafficking, whatever, anything, very illegal, bad for everyone involved except the top guy. Let's say that all of that is that way. How do you then feel about people buying gold from other players? Because so many, like I would go as far as to say like 90% of the people you see like top of the PvP ladders who are doing, arena boosts, I think so many of them sell that gold. I've had people in my guild who are not, great PvPers or anything. They've made a lot of gold through, legitimate ways, and they've sold it to other guildies who have less time. They've sold it to random people on the server. If all of the, third-party gold buying is like super bad and, human trafficking and all that, how do you then feel about people buying from other players?
Okay, so my first question when I hear that like proposal would be, are we talking about a hypothetical world, Arcos, where no botting is going on? Because obviously if you put a financial incentive in front of the player base like that, where, hey, we will now legalize it, man, you can now sell your gold to other players and it's not against terms of service.
No, I'm just saying that everyone who plays the game fully knows and acknowledges that the third-party websites, like the people behind it, are, they're using child slavery or something, so no one really wants to do it. But alternatively, they find someone on their server who has not bought it, who has not exploited, who was, either boosted someone in arena or who has just manipulated the auction house in a totally legitimate way to make a lot of gold, and they're like, hey, yeah, you can buy gold from me, these are the prices, like just like it would be on the website, but it's just one-to-one in game or through Discord or whatever. They haven't bought it or anything like that. They've made their gold, quote unquote, legitimately.
I hear what you're saying. Personally, yeah, while I get it's a better system, like in terms of it doesn't involve human trafficking and all that stuff. But like personally, I'd still be against any form of gold buying in game. Like even if you give it like the seal of approval, hey, here's some ethically farmed gold by a player, no bots used. We have set up a secure system through which you can engage in legal purchases for, basically the time they've put into the game has resulted in some money that you can now buy. It's all above board, blah, blah, blah. Look, while it's definitely more ideal than the system we have now, I'm still against it. But I mean, fuck, maybe I'm the old fuddy-duddy where I'm just like, I don't want anyone buying gold because I feel like you should be bound to the time that you put into the game as opposed to every player being given the option of a shortcut. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like you could have a broader conversation about how healthy it is to have games like MMOs where you being successful in the game is like so tied to putting in a lot of time. But that is like a feature of MMOs. Like you're only supposed to have a lot of gold or really good gear or whatever if you put a lot of time into the game, and anything that you're paying for that isn't purely cosmetic really gets in the way of that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm on either side. I've just said like I know people who have made their gold legitimately and sold it. I haven't done it myself, but I'm just interested to see like how people feel about it. But like Hank says in the chat, like there are games where they get balanced by people actually selling things. And it's interesting that he mentions EVE Online because when I was in university, I had one of their community managers had a talk at my university, and it was really interesting to see how they look at it. And how when two fleets of battleships have a battle together, you can put a real world currency value to the losses. And he referenced a point where two of these fleets were fighting each other, and by the end of it, like the real money, like value lost, was in the tens of thousands of dollars of player value in actual currency, like because they have this some sort of token system. I just find it interesting how people feel about different things like this. But yeah, don't support Chinese child or prisoner slavery labor. Don't buy gold, guys. Come in.
All right, guys. On that note, look, I mean, I could have gone longer, but I won't. We pretty much said everything I wanted to say. You guys have been fantastic. Anything we've left on the table that you feel anything you want to yell out high from the heavens before we go? Speak now or forever hold your silence. Waklo, Arcos.
I think it's interesting what Tian is saying in the chat. Like, we don't really frown upon people giving each other gold, so long as it's a gift. But some people, at least, would take offense if there was payment involved. Like he mentions, like a guy quits and gives away all of his gold. Like, we don't really care about that. Like, that's fine. But if that same guy were to sell to 10 people on his server 10,000 gold each for $5, $10, whatever, we would have an issue with it. So it's just it's a conversation that we could have for hours and hours and hours, from all different sides. But yeah,
we've given it a good start.
We'll call it quits here, I think.
All good, mate. Waklo, anything else from you, man?
Just Som 2 when are we getting Som 2?
Tell me about it. Don't even start. Oh my god, I'm playing so many different servers now. I said to Patricia yesterday, like I said, I'm gonna play on this server that started yesterday, and she's like, another one, and I'm like, yeah, I'm playing a bit of everything because I don't want to get married to any version of the game now because I'm fucking hanging out for Som 2. I don't want to get too deep. I'm just leveling characters to like 30 on 4 different servers because I'm like, come on, Som 2.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing hardcore, which I've never done before, just because I've got the vanilla craving, but I might just hold out. I don't know how patient I can be.
Let me...
I think it's kind of interesting how excited you guys are for Som, because I read a comment the other day. It went something like, we went from rose-tinted classes for classic to rose-tinted classes for private servers, like with the botting and stuff like that, with the community outreach and all that. It's just kind of funny.
It's still, he's one of my things that bugs me, and this will get all the private server Andes upset, but I'm sorry, it's the fucking truth. Obviously things happen at different scales. I think, look, guys, I play private servers, and I said this on the call with North, I'm far more in tune with the private server scene than people seem to think I am. But here's one fucking truth about private servers, and I'm not trying to say fuck it. Anyway, I'll let it speak for itself. Like I said, intimated earlier, botting is a problem that is fucking the internet's problem. Like, it's a thing. We can't just eradicate it. Bots exist on private servers. They do. I'm sorry. Gold selling exists on private servers, and everyone creates this fucking, utopia of the private server. Like, oh, mate, they're run by people that love the game, who have the highest of ethics, and fucking they jump on the band straight away and they clear out the bots and they don't have gold selling. It is such fucking bullshit. They just have it on a much smaller scale. Yes, it's far less of a problem, but it still exists. So like, I'm not doing the and all the private server Andes would fucking, I hate them when they do the move, because like they're so anti paying for a game. Like, you're the man if you pay $1 for a game. It's so fucking stupid. But anyway, I'm not saying if you want to play a private server, play a fucking private server. It's your decision at the end of the day. But I never liked the private servers at 10 out of 10 and the fucking holy land of WoW. Like, mate, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I won't argue that they didn't have bots, but I would argue that they at least didn't have a financial incentive to keep them. Usually private servers are free to play. Like the devs, they don't really have, a
True.
wage.
I mean, the devs of private
for
servers
doing
sell
it.
gold personally as well. I mean, come on, man.
I mean, that's probably in many servers that they could have done that, but I think if that private server was to be successful, they at least have to keep it at a level that isn't, completely outrageous.
Just like
And,
Blizzard does. Just like Blizzard does. You've got to toe that line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. But I think Blizzard hasn't really towed the line. I think they've gone, the line is somewhere in the rear view mirror. But I would point out that I will probably soon not be playing because Nitad is about to quit to play some, and he says he's going to send all his gold to me to see if I get banned. So don't be surprised if I rage in your Discord soon.
Fair enough. Waklo, what are you playing in SOM 2?
Warlock, unless there are big class changes, then I'll have to think about it more. But if it's like vanilla Warlock.
Very good. What's the biggest class change you're hoping for?
Assuming they bring in all TBC stuff, I think it would be cool to play Moonkin and actually be useful in vanilla. I might do Boomy.
What about you, Arcos? Have you thought about this at all?
I have no intention whatsoever to play Season Mastery.
We'll get you. We'll get you.
And I'm going to have a second child soon, so soon there will be time for me to just touch grass on the weekends instead of sit in front of a computer.
Very good, mate. Very good. Yeah.
Thanks.
Congratulations. All right, guys, look, let's leave you there. Any shout outs before I let you go for the guild or anything? Arcos, hit me.
No real shout out. Just as always, thank you for putting in the time with this. You've been at it for what, like five and some years?
5 years too many, yeah.
I think. Yeah. I mean, just thank you for putting in all the work, the organizing, the waking up early, the staying up late, getting so many interesting and fun people on the show. It's been one hell of a ride. Wish you all the best, and if anyone wants to shoot the shit with Nitad in the chat, you can check out my Twitch channel at some point, if I ever bother to turn it on.
Give us the Twitch name again.
It's Arcos and underscore TTV.
Yeah, ARCOS. Go look for it, guys. Underscore TTV. Mate, Waklo and Arcos mentioned, I haven't woken up at 7 a.m. for a call in a long time, but I love you too, and I'm more than happy to do it. Mate, any shout outs for you? Any guildies or anything like that?
I'll shout out my NA guild this time. It's called Bury Me in a Gucci Bag. You guys are the best.
It's a nice name.
That's a fucking brilliant name. Oh my God, I love it.
I hated it at first, but I've grown to love it.
I'm remiss to mention, so I'm going to put together a guild for SOM 2, but it's going to be the world's first non-guild guild. It'll be great. I want to mention the name, but I can't because I fear someone will take it, but it's a doozy. So
I'm going to 100% take it.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll hang on to it. It's not particularly inventive, but I'll see if I can get away with it. It's a little bit explicit, but we'll see how we go. But yeah, I'll keep you updated on that one. All right, guys, look, thank you so much. And I will end the stream here. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'll catch you later. Hang on one second, guys. I'll talk to you in a sec.